Everybody, and we are going to pull a classic move called Be the Media. We have decided to move forward with the public education press conference this morning, and despite some valiant efforts to wrangle local media, there were some competitions and conflicts, but we think this message is a little bit too important to let it go unnoticed. So we are live on Facebook this morning, and we are ready to amplify our message and the message of all of our speakers this morning and every public school champion in Eau Claire today throughout the coming days. The Joint Committee on Finance is getting ready to hear testimony from the public on what they expect to see from the most important piece of legislation in Wisconsin every 2 years, and that's the biennial state budget. My name is Phelps. I'm the Director of Digital Organizing and Communications for Wisconsin Public Education Network, a statewide, nonpartisan, nonprofit project full of people who just believe that the students in our public schools deserve the funding that they need to thrive. Last fall, Eau Claire, which is my home city and from which I'm an alum of the public schools, was one of a near record number of school districts that saw a school referendum on the ballot. And even with skyrocketing inflation, a third year of COVID, and an increasingly toxic political environment, we joined 80% of our fellow Wisconsin communities in passing our school referendum in 2022. And then what happened? 2023 came around. Last week, we had another election. The referendum passage rate dipped to about 67%, which is an overwhelming majority, but a more normal one in the long-term scheme. In a budget year, it turns out it's even harder for local communities to voluntarily raise their own taxes, knowing that the state is about to revisit an over $7 billion surplus and has the opportunity to do better by our communities this time around. I don't think I'm alone in saying we are tired of having to do this the hard way and fill the gaps left by the state. With a surplus that's bursting at the seams and a governor's budget proposal that's already sitting on the table, we shouldn't have to anymore. Wisconsin is often characterized as a hotbed of political division. But when it comes to our public schools down the street, where kids learn and play, where our neighbors teach and volunteer, and families are nurtured, Wisconsin is incredibly united. Today, families will share their experiences with special education, highlighting what a 60% and 90% reimbursement from the state would mean to them. District administrators are uniting to discuss the burden of revenue limits, which pit districts against districts with mismatched, arbitrary spending caps that have left schools in Eau Claire and many areas districts behind for 30 years. Individuals will discuss the need to finally prioritize students in poverty, English language learners, BIPOC students, LGBTQ+ students, students with disabilities, and the many individuals our state has so shamefully discriminated against for too long. All of these people have important responsibilities that can't wait, but many are here regardless, because this is the platform democracy has afforded us. And we think it's very important that the general public, not just our lawmakers, hear what they have to say today. So, some excellent speakers standing behind me right now are going to come up to the mic and share their stories, why they're here and why they care about the education budget. It'll only be a snapshot of the voices around the state who are united, but it's an important message, and we're glad that they're sharing some time with us today. Michael Johnson is the superintendent of the Eau Claire Area School District. Abe Smith is a clerk on the Menomonie Area Board of Education and an officer of AFT-W 6503 Stout United. Amber West is a La Crosse area high school organizer with Leaders Igniting Transformation. Ron Duff Martin, an Eau Claire middle school teacher and National Education Association Executive Committee member. And, importantly, Dr. Jill Underly, the State Superintendent of Public Instruction. We are very disappointed that the Joint Finance Committee did not invite Dr. Underly to testify on the budget voluntarily this cycle, and we think it's very important that the highest education official in Wisconsin and the experts in the public education field be heard as we craft this powerful piece of legislation. So those speakers will come up to the mic one at a time, and we're excited to hear what they have to say.
Thank you and good morning. I'd like to thank WPEN for this opportunity to speak today, as well as UW Eau Claire for hosting the JFC hearing. Many public school advocates behind me are here today to promote funding and increased revenue limits for K-12 public schools. As you may know, and many know, funding is not based on our demographics or student need. Instead, revenue limits are based on what a school district was spending 30 years ago, my first year in teaching in Abbotsford, and they've continued ever since. They haven't kept up with inflation over time, and while those caps were supposed to expire after 5 years, they didn't. This isn't a fair or equitable way to distribute tax dollars to serve the over 800,000 public school students in Wisconsin. We've contacted our local legislators about this key issue. We've done so individually as well as collectively. A couple months ago, I recently joined colleagues behind me from Gilman, Mondovi, Abbotsford, Whitehall, Oliva Strom, Osseo, Fairchild, and New Auburn to travel to Madison to advocate for our students. Meeting with local legislators like Warren Petrick, Jeff Smith, Jody Emerson, and Jesse James, who just walked by a little while ago, has been very helpful for their knowledge as well as ours. I approached Neillsville Superintendent John Geyer to speak today in the Davie Center based on his experience and knowledge in this area. John plans to provide budget testimony to the committee with superintendents and advocates standing with him. Districts large like us in Eau Claire and small in this area are united. Revenue limits trap our students and districts in very disappointing funding cycles, creating winners and losers every budget adoption. In Northwest Wisconsin, we're learning there are far more districts like ours in Eau Claire who are losing on critical funding and have been for years. Ultimately, we hope the JFC will do the same thing they did 4 years ago, raise that low revenue ceiling and provide additional funding through per pupil categorical aid. This opportunity is needed to support our public schools and communities, no matter what zip code you live in. Our students deserve it, and our state will benefit greatly from such an investment in its children. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Abe Smith. Today, I'm a research scientist and a math professor. My research on safety standards for AI algorithms is supported by NASA, DARPA, the Air Force, the Army. And as a math professor, I have helped train thousands of future engineers and scientists. I'm also an elected official, proud to serve on the school board in Menomonie. Menomonie is a great school that works hard to be fiscally responsible while providing a great education for everyone. I am where I am because the state of Wisconsin knew that I had value. I went to public schools in Wisconsin. I got my math and physics degrees from UW-Madison. Wisconsin knew that I was worth it, that I could go far, that I could learn anything with good teachers and individual support. We all know what inflation means. It means that $1 last year is worth less than $1 is this year. It goes less far. Are this year's first graders worth less than last year's first graders? Do we expect them to go less far, to learn less material? The Wisconsin Association of School Business Officers, WASBO, computed that the inflation gap since 2009 is over $3,235 per student each year. Wisconsin's budget today says that a first grader today is worth $3,235 less than a first grader in 2009. My daughter is a first grader this year. So are thousands of kids across the state who deserve the same chance I got decades ago as kids in Wisconsin. This year, we can fix this. This committee, this legislature, has the power and the responsibility to tell every kid across Wisconsin, you are worth it. You can go far, you can learn anything, just like it did for us decades ago. So please follow the advice of WASBO, WASB, WASDA, the professionals who keep our schools open, and make sure that the state revenue caps, the state aid, they start to bridge that gap and keep track with inflation into the future so we don't keep making this problem worse. Increase categorical aid for special education so we are not pitting students against each other, and create broad-based flexible aid for mental health so that schools don't have to compete for grants to support our students' mental health needs. Public schools build the future of Wisconsin by investing in our kids, and public schools unite us. Thank you.
My name is Amber West. I'm a youth organizer for Leaders Igniting Transformation, a nonprofit political organization that advocates for Black and brown students led by Black and brown students. We are around 13 high schools across the state of Wisconsin and at 11 different college campuses here in the UW system. I travel here today from La Crosse, Wisconsin to ask our JFC committee to invest in our now. Students and youth in Wisconsin need equitable funding for K-12 education. Students are here today spending their spring breaks and their days off begging elected officials to do their jobs. Students are here today missing classwork and school time to beg elected officials to do their jobs. While working in the high schools, I've witnessed so many injustices for our youth. One of my students here today was discriminated against by his own school nurse for his disabilities. He was then unlawfully searched by his dean of students and SRO. This is the reality for many of our students within Wisconsin. The Wisconsin Constitution states that we are entitled to free and public education. You cannot expect students to perform well at an institution meant to break them. You cannot expect students to show up to school when school is no longer safe or equitable for them to be at. You cannot expect teachers to do their jobs when they are overworked and underpaid. The youth deserve better. We deserve elected officials who will actually serve their citizens and not their own personal agendas. Students, youth, and citizens across Wisconsin are watching. We urge you to all fund K-12 public education equitably and make higher education affordable and accessible. Increase spendable state funds across the board, raise district spending authority, and adjust for inflation with the ultimate goal of eliminating revenue limits. Invest in our youth, invest in us right now.
Wow, that's a hard one to follow. Growing up in a small rural town in northern Wisconsin, I appreciate the incredible experiences I had in my public school. My name is Ron Martin, and I grew up in Minong, Wisconsin. I have been an educator for 31 years and currently serve on the National Education Association's Executive Committee. Our public schools are the heart of almost every single community. Our public schools serve the community and every single student that walks through their doors. Our public schools work. But I also know that for so many of our public schools, it is nearly impossible to meet the increasing, growing needs of the student population they serve, let alone pay the utility bills without significant increases in funding. The budget that has been presented by Governor Evers is a budget I am hoping every single legislator can support. It is helping to address the needs of our public schools. In my role as a member of the NEA Executive Committee, I have traveled all over this country, from Alaska to South Dakota to California, North Carolina. No matter where I go, I am hearing very similar things that all comes down to an educator shortage. Wisconsin needs to invest in attracting and retaining quality educators. School districts like Eau Claire, Fall Creek, Beloit, Bellevue, Siren, or any other 400 plus public schools can't offer salaries that say we value you and respect you because budgets are so tight now. Governor Evers recognizes the need for investing in our public schools, and the budget he presented begins to start to address the teacher shortage. I believe no matter where a child lives, no matter her or his zip code, they should get a great public education. This means all kids have a right to be taught by incredible educators. I want every single student to be able to have a quality experience like I did in my rural public school in northern Wisconsin. The governor's budget believes in all our kids, believes in our communities and our public schools. And I ask legislators to also believe in all our kids, our communities, and our public schools, to do the right thing and pass the governor's proposed budget. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jill Underley. I'm the state superintendent for the state of Wisconsin. What an incredible group of parents and teachers, administrators, staff, and students and school board members here with us today. So thank you all for being here. I'm here to add my voice to the chorus and advocate for increases in general aid and revenue limits for Wisconsin school districts. The reality is that our districts are hurting right now. Districts are hurting because running schools costs money and they don't have enough. They don't have enough because their one-time federal funds are set to expire. They don't have enough because they're not seeing meaningful increases in general aid or revenue limits for far too long, especially when faced with inflationary costs. They don't have enough because they have to transfer funds. We're talking millions of dollars from their general funds to cover legally required special education services due to our state's abysmal reimbursement rate. They don't have enough because they're being asked to do so much more than ever before in responding to our youth mental health crisis, in addressing food insecurity, and attracting and retaining staff in the face of workforce challenges across every sector of our economy. Wisconsin districts don't have enough money, and when schools are underfunded, when schools are hurting, you know who gets hurt the most? Our kids, and that's unacceptable. And despite all of this, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because we have a historic opportunity in this budget to robustly and meaningfully fund our public schools and libraries in Wisconsin. And I'm hopeful because doing so will create lasting impact on the future of this state. What an incredible legacy this Joint Finance Committee can leave when they pass this budget and support our public schools and libraries. What a difference they stand to make. Thank you.
So a lot of different and very compelling stories, and again, it's only a few. One thing is really clear to me. Only a budget that puts students first is a budget that actually matches the public's concerns. Just as we've tracked referendum passage rates, we'll be tracking budget testimonies. In Waukesha last week at the first hearing, public pre-K through 12 and higher education funding was by far the most popular issue that came up in public testimony, just as was the case in every live hearing 2 years ago. And some of the people you've heard from today have been at a lot more than 2 of these cycles, asking for many of the same things. This year, Wisconsin Public Education Network partners are employing a budget ambassador model of change, because we recognize that our audience isn't only lawmakers, but also our friends and neighbors, our fellow book club and PTA and sports league members, as those who care about kids in public schools are embedding budget advocacy into their everyday lives. We are making it impossible for anyone in Wisconsin with any role in our democracy not to understand what's at stake in this process. We know that a nonpartisan majority of public school champions are united in their understanding that Wisconsin deserves better this time. So thank you all again for being here.